So it has been a weird and wild week for Nintendo news because, as we all know, Nintendo first decided to announce the very random product that is known as Nintendo Alarmo, and then later that same day, they also revealed something called the Nintendo Playtest program that seems to be some sort of online beta test for an online feature that some people are allowed into and will be kicking off in a couple of weeks. So I am 2 days late to this story, and at this point, everyone and their mother has already talked about it or made a YouTube video about it. And I definitely was thinking about not talking about it because I didn't initially have a lot of strong opinions about whatever this thing was going to be. I'm waiting for updates about Metroid Prime 4 and the Switch 2, if I'm being honest. But of course, there's ways to connect the dots in our mind's eye where maybe this thing does somehow relate to the Switch 2. I think there is a pretty good chance. And as I've thought about it and seen more conversation going on, I realized that there are a couple of thoughts I wanted to just kind of discuss with you guys about what I think this thing might be. Now, you can see their tweet that they made about it. Again, this was on the 9th. They said, "We will be performing a test related to a new feature for Nintendo Switch Online on Nintendo Switch. Starting at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on October 10th, existing Nintendo Switch Online and expansion pack members will be able to apply to participate on a first-come, first-served basis." They have some follow-up tweets about some of the details on how to qualify for the registration to be able to be a part of it. One of the details is that you have to be a Nintendo Switch Online and an expansion pack member. And it's worth noting that by the time it actually went live, the registration period, the following day on the 10th, it was like immediately all 10,000 spots that were available were filled in. There was plenty of stories of people saying that they were waiting right there as soon as the time began to just sign up for it. And within the second that it was available, it was already done and filled. It's like trying to go online and buy concert tickets for like Tool or Metallica. It's going to be a mad dash and they're going to sell out the second everything becomes available. That's basically what happened here. So one thing I want to say as a little bit of a background, I didn't initially find this to be really all that interesting or exciting. I know that just because it was an announcement for Nintendo, and it is admittedly kind of strange and it feels like a big deal, everyone was laser focused on it. For some reason, my Nintendo radar of like things that interested me just didn't really pop off when I first saw this announcement. I was like, okay, stuff for NSO, and so whatever. We'll see what that is. Maybe it has to do with Switch 2, whatever. It's vague and mysterious enough that I just don't really care. I'm waiting for something more significant, not this kind of a thing. So I didn't really pay too much attention to it. Also, here's the other thing. I'm not currently an NSO member. Like, I canceled my subscription last year. I don't even pay for the base tier, let alone the expansion pack. And you have to be an NSO member and have the expansion pack. And I don't have those things. I don't need them. I don't pay for any of the three, Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony. I don't have Game Pass. I don't have PSN either. I don't pay for any of these services. I don't currently find them to be all that worth it. I mean, they're fine. An NSO is fine because I like having access to old games, sure. But if you know me or follow me on Twitter, I talk about this a lot and I tweet about this a lot. I have a Nintendo 64 and a Sega Genesis and a Saturn and retro consoles, a GameCube. My Wii U plays Wii discs, so I don't really need a lot of these retro consoles to be available on my Switch because I already have the actual consoles. So I just don't really pay for any of these. And I also, by the way, I never play games online anymore. I just don't. Once Monster Hunter Wilds comes out next year, that is going to be the reason I sign up for PSN again, because I will be playing Monster Hunter Wilds online. But until then, I don't need to play online. I only play single-player games. And so anyway, that's just my explanation on why I'm not a member and why I didn't even qualify for this. And because I didn't qualify for this, I had even less interest. I don't really care too much about what any of the three console manufacturers provide for their online monthly service that they charge people monthly or annually for. I just don't pay attention to it. Even Nintendo, which is my favorite company, I just wasn't focused on it. However, more details are starting to come out. The speed at which this thing got filled up is certainly interesting. And to be fair, 2 days later, here I am making this video because yes, maybe it's impossible to deny that maybe this could relate to something happening with the Switch 2 down the road. Now, two interesting facts I want to talk about here. First is the prevailing theory on what this thing might be. And I have to admit, it probably makes the most sense. So I tend to think that there's a good chance this theory is correct. So credit to the internet. I don't know who first started this or where it came from, but a lot of people are talking about this. There is a chance that this has to do with the ability to stream retro games, or maybe even current games. I guess I don't know. Stream video games to your Nintendo Switch. Remember, this tweet specifically says the Nintendo Switch, but this might also apply to the Switch too. So for Nintendo Switch Online, maybe they're going to be launching and testing a feature to stream games to the console as opposed to downloading them. So instead of downloading the Nintendo 64 app thing and playing Mario 64 on that because it's downloaded to your Switch, maybe you would be able to stream from a server somewhere Mario 64, and they're trying to have people test streaming games of some kind, retro or modern or both, and to see how that connection holds up. And there have been a few games that operate this way. The two coming to my head are Resident Evil 7 and Control. I think those are two games that you actually, if you buy them from the eShop, I think you're only buying the ability to stream those games. They don't download to your console, and they're not available physically for the Switch. And so this theory is that they might be testing the ability, a future ability, to stream games to the Switch Online service, and that maybe they're focusing on games for the Nintendo GameCube and the Nintendo Wii. And of course, that's a very exciting prospect, even though you will never catch me streaming a video game to my console ever. I will never do it. It's not interesting to me. It is, if this turns out to be true, interesting to know that in any way, shape, or form, they might finally be making available GameCube and maybe even Wii games to the Nintendo Switch Online. So, even though the streaming thing wouldn't be interesting to me, I like the idea of those consoles finally being made available. The other part of this theory is the fact that we know that it's been confirmed that the file size that they want you to download to be able to access this thing, which, by the way, it's worth noting, I didn't mention this, the date that this thing is going to actually happen is October 23rd to November 5th. So this is like almost a 2-week playtest period, a beta period that everyone, all 10,000 people are going to be able to test, right? So for 2 weeks, they're going to be able to do this. And apparently the file size of what you need to download, I think, is 2.2 gigs. Now, I went ahead and I looked up how big the download size is for the Nintendo 64, which is, you know, the largest scale games and the largest scale console. You can download the app for to play on your Switch. How big is that file size? That is 1.67 gigs. So at 2.2 gigs, this would be bigger than the SNES or the NES, the Genesis, the Game Boy ones, or the Nintendo 64 by quite a bit, 2.2 gigs. So what if this is some sort of a GameCube thing? Is it streaming? Is it not streaming? Is it an app download? We don't know, but the concept of it being something for GameCube games or Wii games, I mean, just looking at file sizes, and I'm just putting, you know, connecting dots based on nothing more than a guess here. I don't know. What if it is a GameCube app, right? And so the N64 is 1.6 gigs, but the GameCube one is 2.2 gigs. In theory, that would make sense to me. And so the other really big element here that everyone is discussing, and the last thing I want to talk about before I get into more theories, is the fact that there's like an NDA kind of, it's almost like a gentleman's agreement NDA that Nintendo has proposed to everyone who's now been accepted into this thing. There's no signatures required. It's laid out here in this tweet, and I'll link this below as well. That once you click to participation page at the bottom of the page, you agree to the Nintendo Switch Online Playtest program and the terms and conditions, and it's basically, you know, long story short, it's a promise to not talk about or leak or share information anywhere to anyone you know or online in social media about what you're doing. It's not a legal NDA in the sense that it's not requiring a signature from what everyone is saying. It's just like I said, to me, I'm calling this a gentleman's agreement. Hey, please don't share the details of this thing we've let 10,000 random unvetted strangers into. And we sure hope you don't tell the world what you're doing. And so, what a weird thing. And I have to say, I mean, here's the thing. This thing is going to leak. it's going to get out there. I find this to be a strange choice, and I think it's a little bit telling that Nintendo might not actually be preparing that big of a revelation with this thing than a lot of people want it to be. So let's get down to brass tacks. My ultimate feelings here, and a lot of this is based on the NDA, is that if this was something really serious, if this was something really impactful to their next generation console that they've already told us exists and we will be learning about sometime soon, then I don't think that they would allow 10,000 random unvetted people, like I said, into this thing. This would be something via a special invite to YouTubers, content creators, people in the press and in the media who they already know or have a working relationship, maybe only content creator Nintendo ambassadors, and they would make them actually sign a legal NDA. The fact that it's just 10,000 random-ass gamer strangers anywhere on planet Earth, and it's just, hey, read these terms and conditions, please don't break this. And I know that you're going to probably click I accept these terms and conditions, so there might be some sort of legal recourse through that, but it's still such a low barrier for entry. There is not, at least to me, it doesn't seem like there's much of a firewall protection around this test for 10,000 random people, you guys. And so with this low of a level of protection around this thing, I'm sure that in a perfect world, Nintendo wouldn't want this to get out there, but they're probably expecting it to still get out there to some degree. And I don't think that this is the way they would test a major feature or a major feature for their next generation that they want to keep secret until they reveal it. They wouldn't go about it this way. I am, let me just of course say this, only speculating and guessing. I'm a YouTuber. I'm just a regular guy. I'm just watching this from the outside looking in. I haven't read the full terms and conditions. I'm not in this partner playtest. Like I said at the beginning, I don't even frickin' have NSO. So all I can do is just use my deductive reasoning to kind of guess and speculate on what's going on. But I don't know, doesn't it make sense to you guys? I'm really curious to hear if my explanation resonates with you at all. I feel like they would be protecting this a lot harder if it was something serious. And they would just be having IGN and GameSpot and like a handful of the biggest, closest content creators they know testing this thing with serious NDA protections around it. And that's all it would be. And they already do those things anyway when they bring people into in-person events. They do those things, you know, to play games, and you can't talk about or make any content about it until we tell you because you've signed this agreement. This thing doesn't seem very protected, and my conspiracy theory, I don't know that I believe this, but my conspiracy theory would be that maybe they do want people to actually talk about it, and so they're putting up the facade of trying to protect it with a very weak level of protection, knowing people will leak it because maybe they actually want people to talk about it that way to build up hype in an organic fashion as opposed to having to rely on their own marketing. And maybe that's what's happening. Maybe they don't want it very protected because they actually want people to quote-unquote leak it. Like I said, that's a conspiracy theory. It's not necessarily something I believe, but I just find the whole thing very strange, and I wanted to talk about this aspect with you guys in this video. It's worth noting another possibility that I've thought of is that maybe there's just some sort of specific game. Maybe, you know, a game they haven't announced, some kind of eShop or NSO specific release from Nintendo that's going to have some sort of heavy level of Nintendo marketing. You know what? Games like Ring Fit or Wii Sports or Switch Sports, I should say, how they're like very 1-2 Switch, you know, something like that they're going to make that's only available as like an NSO expansion pack experience. Because, you know, things like the Mario Kart DLC, you can buy it separately like I did, but also you get it for free if you already are an expansion pack member. Maybe there's a specific game function that's got some quirky, gimmicky little Nintendo-like thing, like a 1-2 Switch or a Switch Sports kind of a casual experience that's going to rely on NSO and online play, and maybe they're going to test it through this. And so maybe it's specific to a game. We all like the idea of this being GameCube games and Wii games for NSO, and like I said, even though I wouldn't use it, I think it would be cool if they did that. I hope to see something like that. But it could also be some weird, quirky Nintendo thing that's meant for like a more casual audience. This isn't about how can you stream Metroid Prime, you know, or Super Mario Galaxy 2, for example. Yeah, that's a big one. Galaxy 2, a game we all want. So this isn't about streaming Metroid Prime or Galaxy 2 to your Switch. This is about we're making a Switch Sports 2 or a 3-4 Switch that everyone who's an expansion pack member is going to have access to, and we just need to beta test it. We need to beta test it with thousands of people, so here's a 10,000 person beta test, and maybe that's what this thing is for. Again, full disclosure, I'm just a man who's guessing and speculating. I hope this is something really cool and exciting. I know maybe I've had a tone of like, this thing is dumb, but I don't actually think this is dumb. So I hope that it actually isn't being perceived this way. I think it's more that the way people have reacted to it, and a lot of people hoping that this is like a huge sign of the future, which it might be. I just kind of have had a different read on it that maybe it's not that big of a deal. And maybe it's going to be one of those things where we think it's going to be something major, like when they teased that NSO game with a live action person and they made it seem really scary and it was mature rated, and we're like, it was like, dude, this is going to be Nintendo's Resident Evil. And it wasn't. It was a Famicom Detective Club game that's like a visual novel using, still images, I think, and hand-drawn anime characters and stuff, which is fine for that series. I know people really enjoyed it, so I'm not making fun of that. Don't get me wrong. But I think the initial tease made it seem like something very different. Like it was going to be like a higher profile, larger scoped game. Like I said, maybe like Nintendo's going to make a mature, bloody Resident Evil type of experience that's their own brand new IP. And it turned out to be something not at all matching the tone of that first trailer. And so what if this is something similar in the sense that it seems like a big deal? This is the future of Nintendo. This is all about the next generation Switch 2. And maybe it's going to be something just a little bit more low key and not that big of a deal. And like I said, because they're barely protecting people's ability to leak this thing online, and we know it will leak, maybe it's just going to be that. So for what it's worth, I'll leave you with this. I don't want this to be something like that. I want this to be a huge deal. I want this to blow us away. I want this to be something that's like, wow, the Switch 2 is going to be crazy. Look at this thing Nintendo has been playtesting. I want to be blown away. I want to see GameCube and Wii games. Yeah, all of these things. I want it to be something like that. And like I said, it sure might be, but also maybe it's not. So I think I've beaten the dead horse here. A lot of thoughts I wanted to kind of empty my brain of in this video, as you can tell. This is what I think may or may not be happening with this playtest online thing. So that's all I have to say about that.